Imagine you're the captain of an oil tanker. It's March 13th, 2026. 3 in the morning. The Persian Gulf stretches dark and still in every direction. Somewhere behind you, a war is burning. Somewhere ahead of you, the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow throat of the global oil supply, is technically closed. Iranian Revolutionary Guard gunboats have made that perfectly clear to every Western vessel that tried. You're not a Western vessel. Your flag is Indian. Sail forward, and the gunboats let you through. That ship didn't just carry gas through a wartime blockade. It carried proof of something that's been building quietly for 2 decades. That India has been playing a geopolitical game nobody fully understood until the moment it started winning. This isn't the story you've heard. India is nervous, caught between friends, anxious, hedging. That's the wrong story. The right story begins 6 weeks earlier, on the morning of February 28th. The United States and Israel launched simultaneous airstrikes under a classified operation called Epic Fury. By sunrise, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, the man who had ruled the Islamic Republic for 37 years, was dead. So was his daughter, his son-in-law, his grandchild. 7 of Iran's most senior security officials, gone in a single morning. The world held its breath. Iran did not collapse. It retaliated. Missiles rained on American bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, and Qatar. Iranian drones swept across the Gulf. And then came the announcement that stopped the global economy in its tracks. The Strait of Hormuz, the narrow channel through which 20% of the world's oil travels every single day, was closed. Not threatened, closed. Brent crude jumped 8% in a single trading session, then kept climbing, then broke $100 a barrel. The International Energy Agency released the largest emergency strategic reserve in its history, 400 million barrels. It barely moved the price. Meanwhile, on India's northwestern border, Pakistan had launched a full military campaign into Taliban-controlled Afghanistan. Strikes on Kabul.
Pakistani airstrike on a drug rehabilitation center in Kabul has killed at least 400 people.
A two-front crisis threatening to swallow the entire subcontinent. And then, right off India's own coastline, a U.S. submarine torpedoed an Iranian warship in the Indian Ocean, just off Sri Lanka. The ship that sank, the Iris Dina, had just completed a naval exercise hosted by India.
In the Indian Ocean, and we'll play it on the screen there, an American submarine sunk an Iranian warship.
India had literally invited that ship into its waters. Within hours of the sinking, a second Iranian warship sailed urgently into the southern Indian port of Kochi and asked to dock. India said yes. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar stood before Parliament and said it plainly. It was the right thing to do.
The crew is currently in Indian naval facilities. We believe that this was the right thing to do.
183 Iranian crew members, many of them young cadets, were housed at Indian naval facilities. India arranged repatriation flights. It spoke with Tehran 4 separate times at the foreign minister level in the weeks since the war began. Think about the geometry of that moment. A U.S. submarine sank an Iranian warship in India's backyard. On the same day, India gave shelter to the surviving Iranian fleet. Washington said nothing publicly. Tehran called India a friend. This is not improvisation. This is the result of 20 years of deliberate architecture, a foreign policy philosophy Indian strategists call de-hyphenation. The idea is elegantly simple. Refuse to be defined by your alliances. Don't let Washington's enemies become your enemies. Don't let Moscow's wars become your wars. Build relationships with everyone so that when a crisis comes, everyone needs you.
Preference, if I were advising the president, is to call Prime Minister Modi in India.
India bought Russian S-400 missile systems and faced U.S. sanctions threats, and bought them anyway. It deepened defense partnerships with Israel while keeping a port deal with Iran alive. It reduced Russian oil imports when Washington pressed.
Trump has jolted global oil markets by announcing fresh U.S. sanctions on Russian oil.
Then quietly received a special waiver to resume Russian oil purchases when the war spiked prices past $100. That last detail deserves a moment. For years, the United States pressured India to cut its dependence on Russian oil. India complied. It cost them, narrowed their options, strained their budget. And then the Iran war exploded. Oil markets went into freefall, and Washington picked up the phone and asked India, please, buy Russian oil again. We need prices to come down. India, which had just paid a strategic price to reduce that dependence, was handed a geopolitical gift with no conditions attached. Not because Washington loves India, but because India had made itself useful. Iran lets Indian ships through the blockade because India sheltered Iranian sailors and never condemned the Islamic Republic at the UN. Washington gives India oil waivers it won't grant Germany because India is a counterweight to China and a stabilizing voice in a crisis Washington can't fully control. And Iran, now desperate for a mediator with credibility in the West, is asking India, as the current BRICS chair, to step in. Every major player is coming to India with something to offer, because every major player needs India for something. That is what strategic autonomy looks like when it actually works. But here is where the triumph gets complicated, because India is not winning this situation. India is winning this week, and those two things are dangerously different. India imports nearly 90% of its crude oil. Nearly half of that flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Its strategic petroleum reserves, its emergency cushion, last approximately 20 to 25 days. 3 weeks. The Shivalik made it through. A second vessel followed. But over 20 Indian-flagged ships remain stranded. Cooking gas shortages have already been reported across Indian states. LPG prices are climbing. At $150 per barrel, a price Iran itself has threatened. And then there's Chabahar. India spent years building a strategic port in southeastern Iran, its gateway to Central Asia, its answer to China's Belt and Road, its way to access Afghanistan and the Silk Road without touching Pakistan. The US had already begun tightening sanctions on Chabahar before this war. Now, with the conflict ongoing, that project's future hangs by a thread. If India loses Chabahar, China is waiting to absorb it. Strategic analyst C. Raja Mohan said it simply. Chabahar was not merely a port. It was India's bridge to Eurasia. Iran's new supreme leader issued his first public statement on March 12th. No video, no audio. A television anchor read his words while his photograph sat on screen. Nobody knows where he is or whether he's injured. What he said was unambiguous. The strait stays closed. US bases will continue to be attacked. Iran will avenge its dead. Oil prices rose within minutes. This war is not ending this week. And India, the country Iran is letting through its blockade, that Washington is giving waivers to, that Tehran is calling to mediate, with an Iranian warship sheltered in its own port. India is running out of time to use the leverage it spent 20 years building. Strategic autonomy is not a status you achieve. It is a performance you execute, perfectly, in real time, under pressure, while two nuclear-armed blocs are actively at war around you. The moment India chooses a side, the corridor closes. The waivers disappear. The mediator's chair gets pulled away. India isn't caught in this war, but it is trapped by it. Trapped in the exhausting, extraordinary high-wire act of being useful to everyone and committed to no one. Two gas carriers crossing the Strait of Hormuz while the world watches from outside. That image is India's entire foreign policy made visible. The question, the only question that matters now, is whether the war ends before the reserves run out. 25 days. Counting.